Hey, it's Mr. Ghere again. Guided learning, still at home, solve with square roots, notes, day 2. So we're going to do a lot of the same. There'll be a few little things that are maybe a little bit different, but overall the same idea. There are 9 problems on this note sheet. We are not going to worry about the last 3. I'm going to do one of them to show you how to do that, but I'm really worried about the first 6. So the same thing when we get to your worksheet that you're going to do on this unit. Again, they may be slightly different than what the printed materials if you pick those up at the high school, but just watch the videos and we'll go through these. So number 1, same idea as yesterday. If we have x squared equals 100, we want to take the square root of both sides and we get x equals plus or minus 10. 2 answers, positive 10, negative 10, because 10 squared equals 100, and negative 10, when you square it, you also get 100. Number 2, same idea as yesterday, but notice what happens here. If we take the square root of both sides, the square root of x squared is x, that is fine, but we have a negative on the right side of the equation. So if we take the square root of a negative number, we can't do that because there's no 2 numbers that multiply together to equal negative 9. So for now, we're going to say no solution. Next unit, when we get into imaginary numbers, we can do a little bit more with that. Okay, number 3, x squared plus 45 equals 0. Again, we need to isolate the x squared, so we subtract 45 from both sides. Once we do that, now we need to take the square root of both sides. So if I'm here and I take the square root of both sides, the square root of x squared again is fine, but the square root of negative 45 cannot be done right now, so we're going to say no solution. So we put that little 0 with the slash through it, or we say no solution. All right, number 4, very similar to what we did yesterday. We're going to take the square root of both sides, and when we do that, we're going to get x minus 5 equals plus or minus 6. Again, this is one of those, because it has the parenthesis, we need to divide into 2 equations. X minus 5 equals 6, and x minus 5 equals negative 6. Add 5 to both sides. We're going to get x equals 11 for this part of the answer, and when we add 5 over here, we're going to get x equals negative 1. Both of those solutions would make the equation true. All right, 5 and 6, similar to what we did yesterday, but slightly different. Oops, sorry about that. I cut you off at the bottom. So on number 5, before we can deal with the parenthesis, we need to get rid of that plus 2. So just like we've always done, we work with the numbers that are the furthest away from x. We undo the operations. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So when we do that, we're going to get x plus 3 in parentheses squared equals 9. So that works out nice because we have a perfect square with 9. Take the square root of both sides. And when we take the square root of both sides to unlock that parenthesis, we're going to get x plus 3 equals plus or minus 3. Okay? Break it up into 2 different equations. X plus 3 equals 3, and x plus 3 equals negative 3. Here we subtract 3 and we get x equals 0. That is a perfectly fine answer. 0 is a number. If you plug it in, it works. Okay? And then on this one, if you subtract 3, you get x equals negative 6. So 2 answers, 0 and negative 6. All right? Number 6, same idea. Maybe just a little bit more challenging because we're going to have a decimal. So again, we're going to subtract 2 to start with, and we're going to get x minus 5 in parentheses squared equals 17. Okay, square root of 7, or we need to take the square root of both sides. All right, square root of 17, if you're dealing with radicals, cannot be simplified. You just leave it as the square root of 17. We're going to change everything to decimal, though, like we have all week, and we're going to get 4.12. So when we do that, we get x minus 5 equals plus or minus, don't forget the plus or minus, 4.12. 2 different equations now. X minus 5 equals 4.12, and x minus 5 equals negative 4.12. Add 5, we get x equals 9.12. That's an answer. Add 5 over here, and if we get negative 4.12, and we add 5 to it, we get 0.88. So both answers are positive, and we go from there. Okay, so since I made this, I've changed my mind a little bit. If we were in class, I'd maybe spend a little bit more time on this next part. But since we're not, I'm just going to walk you through it. I'm going to skip over number 7 completely. Let's look at number 8. This equation is in standard form. I'm just going to tell you right now, there's a better way to solve this than using square roots. Okay, we can't subtract the 16. If you do that, you're left with an x squared and an 8x. Okay, so we have to do this one completely different. I will work through one of them just to show you that it can be done by taking square roots, but just trust me, 2 weeks from now when we have the quadratic formula, this one will be much, much easier to do that way. All right, actually I'm going to work on number 9 because 7 and 8 are only going to have one answer and I don't want to mess with that today. So let's look at number 9. In order to do this with square roots, and again, we're not going to do this right now, but I want to show you that it can be done. So if you want to just turn off the video right now, go ahead. That's up to you. But if you want to see it, here it is. First thing we're going to have to do is complete the square. We want to make this look like numbers 4, 5, or 6. So we're going to take half of -6, which is -3, and square it. So we're going to add 9 and subtract 9 like we did a long time ago before we left for our break here. Then you put these 3 things together, and that becomes x minus 3 squared. Minus 5 equals 0. Now that should look very much like number 6. Okay, so we can solve this now by taking square roots. Add 5 to both sides, and we get x minus 3, the quantity squared, equals 5. Now take the square root of both sides. We'd get x minus 3 equals the square root of 5, which would be 2.24, plus or minus 2.24. All right, and then we would have to break this up into be x minus 3 equals 2.24 and x minus 3 equals negative 2.24. So like I said, if we were in class, we'd go ahead and finish this and get x equals 5.24 for one of the answers. All right, and then we would add 3 to negative 2.24 plus 3. Looks like it's going to be 0.76. Okay, but again, all year long, I've told you we want to make some decisions that make things easier for us. When it is in standard form, like numbers 7, 8, and 9 are, then solve by square roots is not the ideal way to do it. So I showed you. I don't want you to worry about doing that. Okay? So your worksheet for tomorrow has 12 problems, or that you can work on after these notes, has 12 problems. I don't want you to worry about the last 3. I just want you to do numbers 1 through 9. Those are similar to what we did yesterday, and what I expect you to know this year. Again, next year you're going to get a much more in-depth practice with this stuff, but you know, we're doing what we can in the times that we're living in. So again, stay safe, have a good day, and can't wait to see you all again someday, hopefully.